Welcome back to another video in our template design series, and today we take a look at the road hole, typically a par 4 design, and it's based on the 17th at St Andrews Old Course. This features a blind heroic carry over the corner of a dogleg, which leads to an infinitely better angle into a very tough green. Typically one of the toughest holes on the course, the road is often a par 4, but not always, and features a number of specific elements that you want to replicate. There are some spins on it as well though that we're going to take a look at. So back here at Raynor Ridge, and the fourth is your quintessential road hole. The first thing that highlights this hole is you have a drive over out of bounds or a major hazard on one side of the dogleg. In this case it's very much out of bounds all the way down the left. So, and if you pull that off you get a better angle into the green. If you don't wish to take that option on, you can bail out, but the more you bail out the longer a shot you've got in over a particularly tricky bunker on the corner. Now there are specific elements to this hole, and the second one is around the green. So you will typically have probably the deepest bunker on the course. The road bunker is on the inside of this angled green, and then behind the green you have a hazard. Now in the original at St Andrews, the hazard behind the green was out of bounds, and it's actually the road, meaning that if you bail off the tee and go right, you're hitting a long iron into a very sharply angled green, and many people would just choose to lay up for their second shot, so they've got a simple pitch rather than taking on either the bunker or the out of bounds. But it's a real premium on distance control with a long second shot. So this hole is all about taking on risk either on the first shot or the second, and it's how much courage do you have. The corner on the old course, the 17th, you're hitting over the hotel on the corner, which is a very quirky touch that you'd never see nowadays, but you see that typically replicated in these designs by either a body of water, trees, heavy bunkering on the inside, and the road hole is, it's a very iconic hole that is definitely meant as one of the most difficult par 4s. So we'll play this one and give you an idea of how this might work. First of all, with the clever bunkering on the far side, we've got to be really careful, and there's elements of your prize dogleg here as to quite how far we think we can carry. And that fast may cause problems, and as you can see we're going to end up out of bounds because we've just bitten off a little bit more than we can chew. But if we bail out over here, which is probably not a bad play for this particular road hole with this particular pin, you can play relatively safe. You just leave a very long approach into, and particularly if that pin is all the way back there, you're going to find that very tough to get close to. But certainly a safer option than what we did first time round. So we're going to take a look at a couple of other road holes as we go. So the next version of the road hole that we're going to look at is the 18th at Old Ainsdale, which we wanted as a really tough closer, and we felt from the outset there's no better closer than a road. So you do have out of bounds all the way down the left hand side, really close to the fairway. We've tucked it right in. This is the practice area which made sense to have as out of bounds. Now you then got the green, and as you can see it runs this sort of direction, which is favouring an approach from this side. And if there is some reward with this, if you are brave enough to take on this tee shot, there's a little bit of a camber, which means that any ball landing in and around here will run to the left extremity of the fairway, leaving you an approach in that is doable if still tough. If you are bailing out off the tee and playing over to this side, well, you're looking at coming right over that road hole bunker at the front, or we replaced one road hole bunker with two basically, or this one at the back, trying to stop it just before the edge. In terms of what replaces the road, well, we didn't have out of bounds behind the green, but we did have a very steep runoff that could, if you kind of caught the back edge, could really propel the ball into kind of heavy rough as well. So it's a very tough closer. It's got all the hallmarks of a make your par on a 72nd hole of a championship course. So definitely one of the toughest road holes that we've designed. Now if we put ourselves on the tee, you start seeing straight away that dilemma. So you do have the chance to hit that tiny gap, but it brings into play all of this danger here, and that's definitely a drop shot, most likely too. Or you can bail safe and then you have the really tough second shot. So just to have a little look at how this plays from the safe side of the fairway, we're going to hit driver down the right, and you can see roughly what happens. So there's a lot of fairway to use, although you have to be careful about run out because the fairways are very firm and fast. And we're looking at 200 odd yards in over this bunker. It's not an easy shot, but I'd argue that that's probably the safe way to play the hole. And piling a lot of pressure on the approach shot for sure, but it's doable if very, very difficult. We've just about skated that road hole bunker, and you know what, that's not a bad leave on this hole. So hole 9 at Charleston Hall gives us a little bit of a spin on the road hole, but a lot of the typical elements. You still have to really carry the corner, there's still some blindness there. You still have the wide option out here and the road hole bunker in short. The road itself has been replaced by a bunker rather than out of bounds, which makes sense given the plot. And it's still rewarding the same sorts of shot values, which is, are you brave off the tee, and then can you negotiate this awkwardly placed bunker to a complicated green complex. The real spin, I think, on this template here is the spine in the middle, because that could be sort of seen as a bit of a get out. It's still a very difficult shot, but you can hit driver down here, and then if you're looking at that angle, it's a very tough approach, but you do have a little bit of a backstop. If you're hitting a long iron very high, landing it just short, you're going to be able to roll it back. And I guess what that really encourages is you to take on this bunker with your approach. You don't want to be long at that spine because then you're hitting across and over it. So it's, I guess, forcing you to take on that bunker even more just by the fact that there's a backstop there and potential help if you choose to use it. Where it really comes in is if you've generated that angle by covering the trees on the right hand side, well, you can hit a running approach that's landing here and using this tier to filter down. So it's a twist on the hole, but it makes sense and it fits the design really well. It's still true to all the principles. It's a long, tricky par 4, and it pushes you down the direction of cutting the corner and taking on the tree line on the right as well in order to generate that angle, and it will reward good shots whilst making it even trickier if you are out of position. I think with this one as well, you've got the false front. If the pin's on the front of the green, this holds a very different proposition to if it's back or anywhere basically beyond the spine, whereas if it's front, you're just dealing with traversing this false front. But definitely, let's try and hit a tee shot down here. That was a little bit further left than I wanted, and we're in heavy rough as well to compound it. But let's say we've been in the fairway, you can see the angle we've generated. We are squarely trying to traverse this the road hole bunker, and in this case I'm probably laying up to around about here in order to leave a relatively easy splash shot and use that spine. But you can see how it puts pressure on your tee shot, and it's also going to require a very courageous approach to get close to this pin. One final twist that we're going to look at is the 12th Springbrook Country Club, which is par 5 road hole, something we've looked at before, and it still works on the same concept, but rather than having a blind aspect to the tee shot that you have to contend with this one it's a diagonal cross bunker, and if you go for it and clear it, or you're still facing the same road hole green but with a few twists. So you have the big road hole bunker, and in place of the road behind it, you've got fairway running down to a bunker that's going to leave you a tricky kind of relatively long bunker shot that you're having to splash up here and then try to clear this back part of the green. So I think that works as a really effective hazard. Now you can lay up, and that probably takes going for the green in 2 out of it, whereas going for it you're then faced with this big false front, narrow section of green in the middle, and then the runoff behind. So it's certainly a tricky hole to contend with, and it does put, again, quite a lot of pressure on the drive and clearing that, and the further towards the right you can go, the better you'll look in, particularly at those back couple of pins you might have. What this does mean, putting a road hole as a par 5, is that actually laying up becomes more of an option, and he's given us quite a lot of fairway here and here, which is going to allow us to access those pins there and there around the bunkers if we need to. So it does allow you to be heroic, it does also allow you to be strategic if you want, but that's one final little twist we could look at with the road hole. So the final one we're going to look at is the 16th at Potunk by T Petro, which is an interesting spin on a road hole in that it's got most of the elements you'd expect, but a couple of ones that you wouldn't. You do still have that big carry over to the right hand side with a little bunker if you go a bit too far, but the first aspect that's different is if you are too far to the left even, and don't take on that carry, you are blind heading into this green, which is adding an extra layer of difficulty there. You do have the road hole bunker just at the front, and at the back you've got a steep run off towards the beach, which you definitely don't want to hit. The green is, as you would expect, angled to receive approaches from the right hand side of the fairway, so again really encouraging us to take on that tee shot. Now with this being a par 5, it pulls no punches. You've got a tough tee shot to take on over the right hand side, but the water's not really in play unless you're really out. And where this gets really tricky though is the approach shot. The green is tough, with this back little plateau really forcing you to take on the road at the back, or the road replacement, and try to just run the ball slightly up this plateau. But with it being a par 5, I think you can just run the ball anywhere on this green and probably 2-putt for a birdie. So it's putting a lot of pressure on that approach shot if you want to go for eagle, but you can make birdie, I would say, relatively easily. That's the road hole, traditionally one of the toughest par 4s on the course, but it can be a really good risk-reward par 5 as well. Now the important thing with this one is that you can do it in a number of different ways. It's more about the angles that you create, the orientation of the green, having that one road hole bunker just in front, but beyond that, behind the green could be a runoff, could be a bunker, could be out of bounds, could be water. There's a variety of ways in which you can do this. It's a great hole for teaching you about placement of options and things working in harmony, and the green slopes themselves can be relatively varied. So hopefully this has been useful. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again soon.